but the hottest one could be Cane's or Chick-fil-A. Got to tell you, Chick doesn't give you that fine buttered bread. The Cane sauce is actually better. The fries are a wash. Chick has the ice cream and cookies and a really good chicken noodle soup. The chicken, I think, is really close, and I think it's going to be a hot debate on our text lines moving forward today. 84126. Cane's or Chick-fil-A? Which way are you leaning? Joe Davis first.
I'm going to go with Chick-fil-A in this one.
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
All right.
Absolutely.
I like the Cane's strips. I think they have a lot more meat on them, and I like them a lot.
All right.
How about you?
I love the great people at Chick-fil-A and their organization, but I think I'm leaning towards Cane's because I hit it last night.
Very good. From the 314, Jill, wash berries with water and vinegar mix. Let them air dry, and they will last forever. You guys are so smart. I love these ideas. A couple of entertainment roundup thoughts. For me, last night we went to see F1 at Alamo. By the way, still will say Alamo is one of the best places I've ever gone to see a movie. It's incredibly comfortable, very enjoyable experience. I loved it. I knew John would love it. He really did love it. The cast was great. Brad Pitt, Kerry Condon plays a really great role as the kind of technical director for the team, the F1 race team. Damson Idris, he was new to me. He is phenomenal in this. Javier Bardem is so good in it. It's just pure enjoyment from beginning to end. I totally get why Lynn made the comments she did in her reservations about giving it a glowing review, because it is not going to win an Oscar, right? But if you liked sports movies, if you love Bull Durham, or if you like Maverick, the Top Gun remake, where there's just a lot of action and a lot of really great shots, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience, and I really recommend you go see it at the movie theater.
So what would you give it, 1 to 10?
Oh, I'd give it a 10. Yeah, I'd go see it again. It's 2.5 hours, and me
But
with
you
my
understand
ADD,
Lynn's reservations?
Sure.
But you still gave it a 10?
Yeah, because I don't need to think about it like a movie critic does, which is about whether it's going to win acting awards by the critics community. I can think about it like, was I completely entertained and time went away and I enjoyed it on the edge of my seat the whole time. That was what the experience I was looking for, and I got it.
Joe, it sounds like me. She's saying Lynn doesn't know what she's talking about.
It is not.
That's not what I
100%. I mean, I enjoyed Maverick a lot, but I understand why the critics did not give it, 100% thumbs up across the way. Okay, the other entertainment experience we had over the weekend was an excellent version of this a play from a movie that I think most of you have probably seen. That's right. We went to see The Graduate. John and I were blown away. It was a great production.
Wow.
Sat next to a woman who saw the play adaptation of The Graduate on Broadway decades ago when Kathleen Turner played the Mrs. Robinson role and famously got completely nude on stage. The actor from Clayton who had the Mrs. Robinson role did not do that. She had stripped down to her
All of
underwear.
a sudden that it intrigued Joe for she doesn't? Okay.
But it's, when you just think these people don't do it for a living, they're not professionals, and yet I'm watching something and enjoying it as much as I would at the Fox Theater. So kudos to everybody involved with the Clayton Community Theater production of The Graduate. John and I give it both 2 thumbs up. We thought it was really well done.
All right, let's take our second break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the Hall of Famer Tony La Russa. This is the Frank and Jill Show on the Big 550 KTRS.
Your biggest choice in home restoration is, who do you trust with your home, your most valued asset? Few can match Banner Construction's experience and dedication to excellence. Banner is an elite preferred James Hardie contractor and Pella Windows specialist. Restoration is a one-time opportunity to have Banner's design team show you architectural options to make your home the neighborhood showcase. Call for a free consultation 314-569-1050. And have a banner day.
This is Joe Cordell of Cordell & Cordell. Serving in the military requires great sacrifices, not just for one's country, but also for one's family. Not surprisingly, divorce for soldiers is especially difficult, and it raises a number of challenges that are peculiar to military divorce, things such as deployments, relocation, retirement benefits. So if you're a soldier facing such challenges, go to CordellCordell.com.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements. 600 Kelwood, St. Louis. CordellCordell.com.
And now, KTRS weather from the John Beal Roofing Weather Desk.
It's not. It's Monday. Be nice.
Okay, but do I use that? Well, I
Yes.
got that because of this great manager we're about to have on. In fact, he's the second all-time winningest manager in baseball history. And I would annoy him sometimes because I wouldn't get the answer that I wanted from him. And so his response was, Frank, did I stutter? We are joined by the Cardinal manager, Tony La Russa. Tony, how are you today?
Yeah, I was always ready for Frank, the walking narrative, man. Just had to fit what he wanted me to answer.
Another time, Jill, he said to me, he goes, it doesn't matter if you keep asking the same question. I'm not going to answer it the way you want me to answer it. Well, we got a big event coming up in St. Louis. It's put on by the La Russa Rescue Champions, and it is going to be a celebration of Cardinal championships. Tell our listening audience on how this is going to be an unbelievable night with all these great stars coming.
Well, it actually started opening day the day before. A bunch of us that were in town got together at night, Wednesday and Thursday, and, you know, we were talking about our memories. And there was one in particular, Frank, that really spearheaded, and that was Darryl Kyle. We were talking about Darryl, and then we started thinking that, you know, maybe 10, 15 years from now, because he didn't have a long career with us, that people would forget him. And we thought, man, we got to do something because this guy is the best teammate anybody could ever have, plus the best husband and best father. So that's how it started. And then we started getting bigger and bigger with the plan. So we are going to, in the first half of the show, have a tribute to Daryl. And then Walt Jockey passed away. So in the second half, we'll do a tribute to Walt. But the way it's divided is that the first half is about the championships from 2000 to 2002. The second half is 2004 to 2011. So we have a dozen guys. In fact, in the last couple of days, Jason Mott's going to be in attendance. Skip Schumacher's planning to come, but more. We'll have maybe 5 guys up there, and we tried this before, and like in California, we did it. Well, you have a video of some historic, memorable moment, and then you have the guys talk about behind the scenes, up close and personal, and fans really get a kick out of. You'll have Jim Edmonds there in the second half and talk about how he got to jump on that play in the 2004 playoffs, where he saved the game with that catch. So, that's how we'll handle it. We start with, we just got a caught a real break. Joe Buck will be the host for the entire evening, and we start by recognizing the 80s and Whitey Ball, and obviously there'll be Jack Buck's call of Ozzy's home run. So Ozzy's going to be there to kick it off at the beginning. And then we'll have some comedy at the end of the first half, and then we have a serious moment to start the second half, because we are going to do something where a lot of veterans and first responders are our guests. So we start the second half with the Sergeant Major from Delta Force, Tom Satterley, there's a wonderful documentary on Netflix about him. He got a Silver Star for being involved with that battle there in Mogadishu. And, he'll talk about his efforts and what he and his wife Jen are doing with their All Secure Foundation. So it's a full night, and it's at the Stiefel Theater, right there near the ballpark, right behind where the Blues play. And, I think, in fact, the CEO from Stiefel, Ron Krasuski, is probably going to welcome everybody to get it started.
Sounds like an incredible evening for Cardinals fans and just everybody as well. If you're just joining us, Tony La Russa is with us for a conversation today. Tony, this is Jill Farmer. Tell us, if you will, I have to say, Frank talks about you a lot here on our show, Behind Your Back, and it's all good. He has some great stories to tell about words of wisdom that he learned from you, and funny stories about interactions that you had. In general, let's hear how what was your relationship with Frank, and what do you remember about all your years of working on the two sides of your jobs with each other?
Well, my nickname for Frank was Relentless. There's, he was always going to be coming at you with something that he knew. He had a real feel for our fans, and there was stuff. There's always stuff going on, so he was going to be talking from the fans' perspective. About our relievers, or why this guy was playing, or what's going on. So I always liked it, because I think that if the fans know, at least get an explanation. I don't believe that. I do believe that sometimes when you explain, it comes off as an excuse. Mm-hmm. But I think if fans can hear what really happened or why, that they'll appreciate that these guys are men, not machines, and sometimes we make a mistake, the manager makes a mistake, or the other team just beats you. But I really liked. Frank knows this. His preparation was as good as anybody's, and I always thought he was speaking from the fans' point of view, so I look forward to it.
That's nice of you to say. He once fined me at the beginning of spring training because I got there and I've been in St. Louis all winter because my legs were too white. All right, so it's going to be July 16th, Stiefel Theater. You can buy tickets. Hey, I want to ask you were in town last week, and you had a get-together with Oli Marmol, and then Oli told Mike Claiborne later on that you've meant more to him than almost anybody in his managerial career. And people think, wait a minute, they really didn't work together. Tell me about your rapport and your impressions of Oli Marmol.
Well, now that he's building up some tenure, we've been there for several years, but from the beginning, I've done for him what many did for me. You know, he's a young manager. There's a lot to learn. And if you keep an open mind, like you don't have all the answers, then you start having conversations. And, there are a bunch of subjects. And, one of the things we talked about this time is that if you have the attitude that wherever you are, you're going to improve day to day, that really sells with the club that, even when we have an imperfection, we're going to address it and fix it. If so, by definition, you get better. So I more than anything else, I just share, even our discussions, Frank. It was always me talking from somebody else that taught me. And Ali's always been a willing listener, and I'm impressed, and I'm really impressed because, Albert recently said how good he thinks that Ali is. So that's enough for me.
You brought up Albert, and I think one of the greatest Albert stories, and in my mind, because it has a father-son angle, is when Albert was trying to break in, and your dad and you at that game when he hit the home run. Tell our listening audience about this one.
Oh, that's a beauty. I'll say it quickly. But, my dad worked 6 days a week really hard. He drove the big wholesale milk truck down in Tampa, Florida. He was only off on Sunday. And Sunday he would come with his brothers, my uncles, wherever we were playing. And it turned out we were going to be in Orlando playing the Braves. So he shows up, and this was 2001, and Albert's making a big splash. So I'm there talking to him before the game. They announced the lineups, and Albert's not playing. And he looks at me and says, "What? Albert, you're not playing Albert? I'm here today. You're not playing Albert?" I said, "Well, Dad," I started to explain, he played 6 days in a row. And he has an expression he says in Spanish, which is basically, eat crap. That's what it means. And if I did something that he thought was stupid, that would be his name. So I said, "Well, I'm going to introduce you to Albert." And Albert came over, and my father was, just delighted to meet him, and told him in Spanish my nickname whenever I made a mistake. To this day, if you call Albert and say, "Hey, Albert, what did Tony's dad tell him?" He'll tell you in Spanish the same thing. Well, sure enough, he made the trip, and you can't make this up. It sounds like it's Hollywood. We were down in the ninth inning. I pinch hit him. He hits a 2-run homer to tie it. And my dad just stands and looks at me, just feels like it could kill. I told you, And when we lost to the 10th inning for Cal, hit a home run. But that was my dad. He was a huge fan and recognized right away that this was his first chance to see Albert, and he only saw him in the ninth. So that as he would explain, he was not happy with me.
Oh, such a great story. Speaking of good stories, this year's Cardinals, a lot of the fans and commentators ahead of the season had low expectations, we'll say, and things have turned out a little bit better than a lot of people had thought. What are your thoughts on this 2025 season?
I'm very impressed. I really am, because you unfortunately, when you train in Florida, and I'm not there in Arizona, you only listen and you read whatever you can. But I know there was expectations that there going to be a problem. I think probably the biggest one, was that the potential distraction with Arenado and whether he'd be on the roster. That's a really difficult situation to deal with as far as the team, the manager, the coaches. So get off to a slow start. But one of the beautiful parts about baseball is you play for 6 months. If you're good enough,
Mm-hmm.
you have a way of doing what I'm saying. You learn what you're doing wrong and you improve it and you get into the race. So I've really been impressed with how tough they are. And even when they have the other day they beat the Cubs twice. They lost twice. So you miss a chance to win a series. What do? They go at the next series, turn the page, and play well. So I think they're taking a good attitude with. They've gone younger with some of their talent than the guys are coming through.
I want to get your take on John Mozeliak. We had him on Sports Plus on Sunday night. He talked about how his relationship evolved with you. Like when he first took over for Walt, he technically was higher on the totem pole than you because he was the general manager, but he said everybody knew that I took orders from Tony, at least early on. But more to the question, he gets booed often when he's introduced at Busch Stadium events, but he's in the stretch run of a nearly 2-decade career where he's only had one losing season. Guy's done some unbelievable things. Kind of your overview on John.
Well, we only had that brief time together and had the one championship. What I've learned, and then I've learned it, kind of the hard way since I've retired, and I've been able to be upstairs, with Arizona, a little bit with the Red Sox, now with the White Sox. It is a different perspective and a different responsibility. I frankly do not understand how, like a general manager, how you can do it for year after year, because once the game starts, you want to win as much as anybody in the stands or on the field, and your hands are tied. It's really torture. And, what I've tried to do over the years is I had good relationships with like Sandy Alderson, Roland Heeman, and then Walt, is that you just try to understand the realities of their job, but you can never really appreciate them unless you're just like sometimes, they can't appreciate what a manager and coach go through unless you're down there doing it. So to me, longevity is a good measure, and for him to be there that long, there's enough success there where I know times have been tough lately, and it hadn't been pleasant when he gets that response from fans. But I look at his longevity, and I think you're going to give him a lot of credit.
All right, want to remind our listeners, July 16th, 6:45 it starts. Stiefel celebrating championships. A lot of the big names will be on hand. Joe Buck is the MC, and it's for your animal. Can you explain the new foundation for dogs and cats and what you're trying to do here?
Well, I'll say it quickly, because one thing we always did was it's not just about taking money and taking it to California, but we have 5 local no-kill shelters that we have given tickets to, and they're going, everything that they sell, they keep for themselves. So they make $3,000-$4,000 a piece.
Wow.
We also have Tom Satterley's All Secure, where they work with veterans. But, and our partner is PenFed. They are probably the largest nonprofit to work with veterans. So what happened was we had that original ARF, and we separated, went in the wrong direction, and we couldn't abide by it. And now we started this thing called LaRussa Rescue Champions, and it's the same thing. We're into animal welfare. We really believe in what an animal, like companion animal, dog, cat, can do for a person with needs. So one thing we share at PenFed is a real interest in putting mostly dogs with veterans, because I think when they come back, they can use that unconditional love.
Good stuff, sir. We'll see you in St. Louis. Thanks so much.
Appreciate the chance to talk about it.
All righty. The great Tony LaRussa joining us. Managed here from 1996 to 2011. I was thinking about this the other day. I think I probably interviewed him more than any human being I've ever interviewed. I mean, all those years, sometimes twice a day, before and after, and was always great.
I love it. I love your relationship. I love what he said about you today. I love hearing the stories that you tell when he's not around as well. Very fun way to start the week to have him on the show. A great way for you to start your week is to go to Miller Furniture, and that's because they have their most incredible sale of the year, half price off just about everything, including custom orders. That's one of the things you just don't see very often. Also, they have, if you look at their Fairview Heights store, they have the largest selection of mattresses of any place in the entire St. Louis region, including some of the new technology mattresses that will send cool air if you're somebody who sleeps hot and it interrupts your sleep. They also have ones that you can enjoy the warming 15 minutes before you wake up if you have one of those achy and stiff muscles and joints in the morning. There is just so much out there. If you haven't actually gone into a furniture store and seen all of the great things that can make your life not only more beautiful, but more comfortable as well. all the different technologies that's out there. And of course, there's the beautiful American-made furniture that they specialize in. You can stop by any of their 4 locations: Flagship in Belleville, Fairview Heights, Lake St. Louis at the Meadows, Ellisville off Manchester Road. You could do a little shopping online at Miller Furniture, MUELLER Furniture.com, or better yet, stop by one of their area locations near you. You will be glad you did to enjoy this 50% off sale.
A message from the master. If you are looking
I went to the best restaurant I've been to in my life. This is a guy who goes to Italy 10 times, probably 10, 15 times. Jose Andres Bazaar Meat. It's called, and then parentheses, tasting menu. It's called Bazaar Meat. They're at the Sahara in Las Vegas, but moving to the Venetian in September. He just said, it's the best thing I've ever eaten. Everything they tasted was unbelievable.
Oh, that's incredible.
Bazaar Meat in Las Vegas.
I mentioned to him the story he did last night on the gentleman who is with Fathers for Families in St. Louis, and his story of coming from prison and totally turning his life around. It was one of those ones you're going to remember for a long time. It gives hope to humanity. I absolutely loved it. Something else that I remember is the advice I've heard on the weekend show, Keep What's Yours, with Jeff Zufall and Josh Gilbert from the Heidi Glass Show, and that's because they do an incredible job at giving practical advice on how you can grow your money and make sure that your nest egg is able to support you through all of retirement, because they do something called tax-informed investment strategy, which basically means they understand the ins and outs of taxes like nobody else, and they make sure that you do not pay too much money. It's why Jeff wrote the #1 bestseller on taxes called Keep What's Yours. Is one of the passions in life is helping people just like you and me make sure that we understand our money and have it grow for us through our retirement years. Capital Advisory, grp.com, 636-394-5524. Lots more coming up after the news. Don't go away.
Hey, it's Heidi Glaus, and I want to remind you to tune in to the
Here's another Hall of Famer. What a radio career it has been for George Norrie. It began in 1974 in Detroit. It continues across America, over 500 stations, coast to coast AM. It's an honor to welcome to the program George Norrie. George, good to be with you. How are you, sir? George, good to be with you. How are you? Have we lost him?
Okay, we got some technical problems, so we'll get that. He'll join us.
It's a shame
in
he's been on
just
hold for so long.
in a second. I know. Looking forward to it. It's been fun. This has been a fun interview to do some research for. So maybe should we take a quick break and then we'll get him on the phone again, Joe? Okay, Joe's going to get him.
All right, we should say coming up a little bit later in the program, we're going to be joined by Greg Willard, talk about great careers and talk about an eventful Friday for the Supreme Court for Greg and everybody who follows that court so
We also
well.
need to tell folks coming up on Wednesday, we've got Tariq Khan back for our twice-a-month segment that you guys seem to like a lot called, and we call that we rewatch some of the great movies that we have seen in the past. And I think this one's going to be really, really good. I just looked for it. Our Airplane. I haven't started watching it yet. Have you?
I have not. I'm getting it tonight from Tariq, who was watching it last night, but I'm excited to rewatch it for probably the 10th time.
Yeah, it's our Back to the Future. It was one of those ones, like when I was at college and we were on camp staff, we watched it every single week for so long, but I haven't watched it for a while.
All right, what a career it was. It began in 74 in
We just
Detroit.
lost him again.
Oh, we lost him again. All right. Well, you'd think, we'd get the nationally syndicated radio guy on, that there wouldn't be a problem with connection, but we should say tomorrow, by the way, we're going to be joined by Billy Bush, who has a big event coming up, I think, in a couple of weekends in July. So Billy will be good radio, I promise you. All right, we're going to try it for the third time.
It's a charm. I can feel it.
Third time with George Norrie. Joe, you give me the thumbs up and let me know when we can do it. Yes. All right. George Norrie, welcome to the program. How are you? Huh. George, are you there?
No, lost him again.
All right. Well, I don't know. I think we may have to give this up. I know it's not a problem on our end because we've just did Tony La Russa, who is in Arizona for the interview. So what can you do, folks? Text lines are wide open. Royal Banks of Missouri text lines 84126. All right. Joe's trying his best. What do we got here? All right. George, are you with us? No. Josh Gilbert has come in to help assist. And we are trying. All right, George, are you with us?
I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Sorry for the technical issues. Hey, right off the bat, you're known for this incredible career where you talk on over 500 stations every night. But is it true that you were the one who actually began Karen Foss's career at Channel 5?
Absolutely. Hired her back in 1978, straight out of Kansas City, and she took off like a rocket ship.
How did you know that this was going to be a star in the making, or did you know?
Well, I was the news director, Frank, as you know, at KTRS, at KSDK. And I have a system called the 2-minute system.
Okay.
And what that is within 2 minutes, watching a videotape, if the person doesn't affect me at all emotionally, I pass on. That's how I hired Aaron Mermelstein, Karen Foss, Dan Gray, all those people. And she had this incredible ability to influence you. And so I hired her, and look what her career was. She was the best.
Yep, you're a great judge of character, George Norrie. Thanks so much for joining us. Jill Farmer here. It's a real honor to be able to talk to you today. Let's go back to the beginning. It started in Detroit here for you, and then your career brought you around to St. Louis, and you ended up really loving it here, even though you have you're so nationally recognized, national TV, national radio as well. St. Louis was really the place that felt like home to you. Is that true? And if so, why?
Well, Jill, I love St. Louis. I come back often, do my national radio show out of St. Louis, and I'll be back in September until the rest of the year. It's a great city, and I have seen the ups and downs of St. Louis when they got the Rams and when the Rams left, but I've seen it all. But it's one of the greatest towns I've ever been in, and I've been in many. Just came back from Washington State. St. Louis is the best.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about your family's impact in your career, because I was listening to an old podcast where you were actually being interviewed last night, and the way your mom would critique your work even when you became kind of famous.
She still does. She's 96. She's one of a kind, but she will listen to my show, call me up the next day and say, "Why did you put that guest on, Georgie? Why did you do that?" I like that. And she's one of a kind. But she was one of the main reasons I got into radio and was interested when I was 11 years old. She brought me home a book called We Are Not Alone by Walter Sullivan, who at the time was the New York Times science writer, and it was about extraterrestrial life. And she hooked me on it, and I was obsessed with it. And I said to myself, I want to go into broadcasting and unravel these stories. Look at me now.
Whether we're reading articles in national publications about you or in St. Louis Magazine, one of the things that comes through is that A, you're a great listener and you listen without judgment. B, you have an open mind to things that other people may be dismissive about, like the paranormal or mystical topics as well. But one of the things that really came through to me was how much you care about the people who are up all night, in many cases, listening to your show, to the point where you even work on holidays because you want to make sure that they have somebody that they know is there for them on Christmas or Thanksgiving or whenever that is. Talk about that.
You're absolutely right, Joe. I decided a long time ago to do holidays because there are a lot of lonely people out there. And people look at radio as one-on-one. They have a relationship with me. They have a relationship with you and Frank. And it's important to them. And we're like family to them. And I don't want to let them down. And there have been many cases where people were on the verge of committing suicide. And they've called me. And I've talked them out of it. And they're still listeners, checking in every once in a while. That's the deal I cut with them. I said, you will call me once a week and let me know how you're doing. And that's what they're doing.
Speaking of deaths and suicide, you were moved by the famous movie about a talk show host. That kind of really got to you. Tell me about the impact it had.
Talk radio with Eric Bogosian playing the role of the actual talk show host Alan Berg out of Denver, who was gunned down by neo-Nazis after one of his broadcasts. But while I was watching that, I had done so many things in my career. News director at Channel 5, owner of a television production company. I said, I haven't done talk radio. This is one thing I want to do. And the Dorseys hired me at KTRS as the Nighthawk after I watched that film and said, that's what I want. I want to be a talk show host. And I started making phone calls, and they said, yeah, we've known your career. We guess you could do this. Come on aboard. And I created the Nighthawk, and it took off like a rocket ship.
Wow, that's such a great story. I have to understand how you physically do this. Do you sleep? Do you take a series of naps during the day? Are you just, after doing it for so long, you're very comfortable sleeping during the day? How do you physically keep up with this pace?
Well, I'm in Los Angeles right now where it's 9:20 in the morning. I'll be on the air tonight at 10 o'clock LA time, midnight St. Louis time. I get about 4.5 hours sleep a day, Jill, but it works for me. And I just keep going. So I'm working during the daytime, I'm working at night, and then the studio hits later on tonight, and I'm there religiously.
What about the line from the Brookings Institute? People can't handle the truth, and the impact that has had on your broadcasting style.
Now you sound like Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. But the Brookings Institute came out with a study about UFOs and extraterrestrials. and they believe the public can't handle it. I think they can. I think we are so conditioned to believe that there's life out there in the universe that if the government's finally fully disclosed to us, yes, it's been going on, we're being visited, people would say, we knew it. We knew it. They wouldn't be upset.
And your first encounter happened at age 11 with UFOs? You were in your home?
That was with my mother's stories and books. The story of Barney and Betty Hill, the New Hampshire couple that claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrials. That
Okay.
hooked me, and I loved it. In one of my first radio interviews, when I was 21 years old in Detroit, was with their psychiatrist, Dr. Benjamin Simon, out of Boston. And I interviewed him about the Barney and Betty Hill case. And I said to him, Dr. Simon, were they lying to you? And he said, absolutely not. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if what happened to them was real or not. But to them it was real. They're not lying. And it was a great story.
Do you have a recollection through the years of something that somebody told you that other people found to be really far out that then was later proven? Or are there too many examples of those to even give?
Oh, I remember, Jill, one day I was doing open lines on KTRS, and a police officer called me. And he said, we got to the home of someone who had called that there was a person in the house getting a heart attack, having a heart attack. Well, we get to the door, and a little old man opens the door for us, and we go rushing in. We got there before the EMTs did, and we see this old man on the floor on his face. We rolled him over to help him. It was the man who opened the door for us who was gone. You hear stories like that, and you just go, gosh, this is amazing.
George, what about impact in terms of other talk show hosts or maybe somebody in the television industry that you watch this person, him or her, for a long time or observe them and you got certain traits from or who you really admired?
I liked a lot of them. Yeah, good old Frank Opinion from KTRS in those early days. Frank was one of the best for live commercials. That taught me a lot. People like that have been a great influence on what I do. I love before my show watching Channel 5 Sports, where you do a great job. I think I sent you an email a few months ago. Remember that one?
You did. I was shocked. And in fact, my response was, is this the George Norrie emailing me? Yeah, I was stunned. Yes, that was great.
No, you do a great job. And St. Louis sports is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We have a great sports commentator community here, writers as well as broadcast. From the 636 on our text line, I love George Norrie. Listened to him when he was on 550 as Nighthawk, and then when he took over Coast to Coast. Talk about a little bit, if you would, that takeover of Coast to Coast and what it was like to make the show your own after Art Bell.
Well, we used to carry Coast to Coast after my Nighthawk show on KTRS, and then they moved me back to a later time, and we bumped Coast to Coast off the air. And people started calling, screaming at me. I was really new, thinking I'm the guy who bumped Coast to Coast off the air, so we got it back on. But I would do fill-in work for them because of the subject matter that I would do would be similar to what Coast to Coast and Art Bell did. And then one of our hosts that folks at the KTRS would know, Mike Siegel, who lived out of Seattle, but was hooked up by broadcast lines, was one of our local hosts on KTRS. He got the full-time job at Coast to Coast. And I called him up one day and said, Mike, if you ever are sick or you need a replacement or a backup, let me know. And he recommended me, and they heard me for the first time, and they said, this is great. And there were many nights, Jill, I would do my Nighthawk show from 9 to midnight in St. Louis on KTRS, and then at midnight to 4, run down the hallway to our other studio there, where I'd be hooked up to Coast, and I would do Coast to Coast on a network basis.
Wow.
Huh.
But eventually Art Bell retired, and they had advertisers calling them saying, who is this guy? Whenever he's on, we're selling radios, we're selling this, we're selling that. he's doing a great job. So they offered me a full-time job. But let's jump ahead to an interesting story. Back in Detroit, 28 years old, producing a TV cast for the CBS affiliate there. My anchorman was a fellow by the name of Ken Thomas. And he'd bring his little boy in every day, and the little kid would run all over the place. Let's jump ahead. I'm in the office of the Premier Networks, and the president at the time was a fellow by the name of Craig Kitchen. Ken Thomas's last name actually was Ken Kitchen. And he looked at me, and I said, "That's your father?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "You were the little boy." And he started tearing up, and I got hired.
That's a great story. Hey, you've been doing this, as you're mentioning, for a very long time, George, and you've got kids and now grandkids in the mix. Do you see yourself ever retiring, or is this one of the things that you're going to do until the very end?
I have told my staff I'm doing it until one day we go to a commercial break and you come back and say, "George has passed on." That's it. I'm not stopping.
Well, Harry Callis, the Hall of Fame broadcaster, died in the booth. I'm sure with your Lebanese blood, you're going to be living for a long time. But at the end of your career, after you do pass away, after you do a great show on the air, what would you want somebody to say about George Noory?
My epitaph was he was fair, honest, and made us laugh. That's good enough for me.
That's great. He was a great listener and a great talker, both. I would add that to the list as well.
Thank you, Jill.
We appreciate your time, George. Thank you so much. Continued success.
To both of you, too, as well. Thank you.
All right. That is the great George Noory, one of a kind, joining us on the Frank and Jill Show on the Big 550 KTRS.
Yeah, super fun conversation. I'm glad we got to get his insights, wisdom, and I love the Karen Foss connection that he's the one that discovered her. That was a great get on your part, Frank, to find that out. A great get on your part if you have had what many people are struggling with this spring, which is having water coming in your house. Most often, of course, through the basement, lower level crawl space. We all have those in St. Louis for the most part. And that's often where the trouble starts, particularly on years when we're setting records, saturated ground, all the things that can make our homes prone to having water in them, which of course can lead to things like mold and mildew, destruction of property, inability to use space for living or other things we need. And that's why Woods Basement Systems really cares about the work they do, because what they do is give a lot of people their houses back. We end up adapting when we have problems with our houses, and then we realize at one point, I just can't keep adapting around this. I've got to actually get to the solution, get to the core of the problem, and fix it. And that's where Woods Basement Systems is just the best partner we could have in that process. They are extremely technologically advanced when it comes to being able to have the most up-to-date solutions at the best price for you when it comes to waterproofing solutions. And they're also great people. Family-owned business, been doing this for going on almost 40 years, and they know it back and forth better than anybody else. Some of the newer players in this industry just don't have the customer service record that you want to see from Woods Basement Systems. 618-708-4055, woodsbasementsystems.com.
When you want to send flowers to a loved one for a birthday, anniversary, or that special occasion, call
Yeah. Thanks as usual for your support and kind words. I like it when you say things like
She's
you're
taking
little.
over, Joe.
You're little. She's your little. As I mentioned earlier in the show, went to see F1 Brad Pitt movie over the weekend. Really liked it in terms of entertainment value. John and I both give it 2 thumbs up. For sure. And every once in a while, we like to play a new song in the Song of the Day, Joe, to bring people up into your generation. Ed Sheeran wrote the song that's the title song for the movie, and it does not. See what you guys think. Listen and then text in on the Royal Banks, Missouri text line 84126. I wouldn't recognize it as an Ed Sheeran song. I like him, and I love this song, but I think it's a little bit of a diversion for him. See what you think.
Is it?
The theme song for Top Gun, Danger Zone, or one of the songs for
the
that.
Danger Zone,
And
yeah.
that was kind of a outside his normal style of singing as well. I think it's kind of fun. What do you guys give it? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Do you need to listen to more, Joe?
I'm gonna thumbs it up. I think it's a little more edgy for Ed Sheeran. I can see what you're saying. It's a diversion of what he usually does.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'll give it a 6.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. I think it's fun. It's number 1 or number 2 song in the country, and I listened to it the other day. I thought it was very, very good. The comedian John Crist, I think, is really funny. He used to be more on social media. He did a great job at kind of poking fun at life. Especially, he had a lot of fans who were regular churchgoers, and he was good at clean comedy that kind of made fun of some of the habits and the things that we do in life. He's made it big time now, and I think he was on Jimmy Fallon last week. This is a funny part of his shtick that I think a lot of us can relate to. Can every couple in the world totally
Yes.
relate to that?
Oh,
where
my
you're like, I'm
gosh.
going to correct you. I'm going to get in trouble for correcting you. I still can't stop correcting you anyway. I think he's funny. Do you like him at all?
Oh yeah, that's a good call. I
I've
love
seen a
it.
couple of people that have seen him in St. Louis, and they say he's pretty good on stage. Well, right after this break, Greg Willard is going to join us. The couple of the rulings handed down by the Supreme Court on Friday over the weekend, a little bit confusing for some of us. So nobody better than having Greg to help us sort it all out. He's going to do that right after these messages.
It's Julie Buck here to tell you that the patio is open.
50 KTRS TV. We love having you listen, watch all the different ways. Greg Willard, KTRS legal analyst, as well as constitutional law professor at St. Louis University. At the White House, President Trump called Supreme Court ruling from Friday a monumental victory for the Constitution. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, the liberal wing of the court, wrote a dissenting opinion calling it an open invitation for government to bypass the Constitution. I thought it was going to be about birthright citizenship. It ended up coming back with a ruling that was a little bit different. Help us understand.
Well, good morning to you and Frank. Quickly, this arose in the context of President Trump's executive order attempting to limit what has been understood for about 150 years plus of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment. What had happened, there had been lawsuits filed in the federal district courts. I think there were 3. The judges in those courts entered what are referred to as universal injunctions. Basically, what those judges said is, President Trump, you cannot enforce your executive order against the parties to these lawsuits, and you can't enforce them as to the rest of the world, the rest of the universe. Therefore, we have this term universal injunctions. President Trump appealed that to the Supreme Court. Now, let me just stop right there because I think it's important for our listeners. This universal injunction, which was entered against President Trump, was not a unicorn. There have been universal injunctions issued against Democratic presidents and Republican presidents. Mm-hmm. This was just one in a long line. The Supreme Court on Friday morning ruled by a vote of 6-3 that federal courts do not have the power to enter universal injunctions. Rather, they are limited to entering relief, in this case injunction, only as to the parties before them. The upshot of that, and why Justice Sotomayor and many others are upset, is for an individual whose citizenship is at risk because of this executive order, that individual is going to have to file his or her own lawsuit because they are no longer the beneficiaries of this universal injunction. The final point to make is the one you noted, Jill, and it is this. The Supreme Court did nothing, absolutely nothing, to decide the issue of whether President Trump's executive order is constitutional. Mm-hmm. Will be for another day.
Okay.
All right. Let's get to another case. The Supreme Court sides with Texas age verification law for porn sites. It's a 6-3 ruling by the Supreme Court. 2 parts on this. Do you think this is an 80-10 issue, 80-20 issue with American voters that many people are in support of what the Supreme Court did, and just an overall reaction to the ruling?
2 parts to your question. As to the political part, I think you're probably lowballing 80-20, Frank.
It's 99-1, I think.
I think it's 99-1. Interestingly enough, in the Texas legislature, when the original bill was put up for a vote, the vote was 164 in favor of this age verification requirement bill to 1.
And that guy runs a porn site?
Yeah, or is the investment banker for the site.
Right.
But I think that the overwhelming majority of Americans would support this restriction. Now, as a matter of constitutional law, as our regular listeners know, we've discussed in other contexts, sometimes the Constitution ends up in places that are not politically proper or convenient or comfortable. But that's the notion of our constitutional republic. The sort of the sides, Frank, to the second part of your question were, on the one hand, you had a state legislature saying we have the right to protect the youth of Texas in this instance. We have what is called a police power, and this is absolutely appropriate for us to pass this age verification. On the other side, you had people saying, no, this is an impermissible violation of the First Amendment and the free expression. The dissenting justices weren't saying, oh, well, waving the banner, we love porn sites. What the three dissenting justices were saying is that the courts ought to scrutinize these statutes with what is known as strict scrutiny. The six, on the other hand, said that is absolutely not required by the Constitution, and therefore, at a lower rational basis level of review, the Texas statute passed with flying colors, and therefore the court ruled 6-3 that the age verification requirement is and will continue to stay in place.
They also ruled 6-3, upholding a key Obamacare measure on preventative care.
Right. The world of Obamacare, it's sort of the Lawyers Full Employment Act. Here we are, 15 years later. There was a provision in the Obamacare legislation, several hundreds and hundreds of pages, but dealing with certain medical procedures, preventative care, as you correctly point out, Jill, that were required to be provided. That was challenged, went up, and as you say, by a vote of 6-3, the limitations on sort of pulling back on those preventative care measures were upheld. The proponents of that initiative were cheering from the rafters Friday morning, and the supporters from its infancy of Obamacare were pounding the table in disappointment in that their views that this will cause millions of Americans to ultimately be less healthy. I think what the six would say is that is not for 9 people who wear black robes to work at the Supreme Court every day to decide. That's for the people across the street at the United States Capitol to decide, and that's where it sits this morning. The Congress will have to decide whether they need to fix this or whether it will continue.
Another one, parents can opt kids out of classes with LGBTQ book characters. Where do you think, that was a vote of 6-3, where do you think it stands politically on this? What type of issue is it? 60-40, 70-30, 50-50? Where do you see America on this one?
Well, it's certainly not 99-1, and it's probably not 50-50. So somewhere in between, Frank. But where this arose was that in the curriculum, I think it was in some public schools in Maryland, a part of the curriculum for very young age elementary school kids, there were LGBTQ textbooks that were being used in the curriculum. A group of parents filed a lawsuit saying we ought to be able to opt our children out from being instructed from those textbooks. The court ruled 6-3 in the parents' favor that they must be allowed to opt out because it violates their freedom of religion rights under the First Amendment. Specifically, if they have deeply held religious beliefs, Frank, that are at odds with the curriculum, whether it's LGBTQ, whatever the curriculum is, if those materially are at odds with their deeply held religious beliefs, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that those parents of the public school children can opt out of having their young children instructed by that in that manner. Whether that is politically palatable or not, in this instance, does not matter.
Mm-hmm.
Congress can't sort of change that because at the core of this ruling was a First Amendment constitutional right to opt out. Congress can't pass a law sort of nullifying that right. This ruling is here to stay. The rebar concrete is quickly drying that going forward, parents with deeply held religious beliefs will have the right in the public school setting to opt their children out from instruction from textbooks which are at odds with those deeply held religious beliefs.
KTRS legal analyst Greg Willard, as always, thank you for helping us understand what can be very confusing stuff out there in the world of Supreme Court decisions. We'll talk to you next time you're here. Thanks again.
Jill and Frank, great to be with you, and Joe. Take care.
And we'll be right back after this.
Hi, it's Frank Cusimano inviting you to join me for the Press Box, brought to you by Control Option, Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. We're going to interview some of the biggest names in sports and have our opening monologue. That's the Press Box, brought to you by Control Option, Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. right here on the Big 550 KTRS, the Talk of St. Louis.
Lots of talk about the weight loss drug. Dr. Joseph Molesky, a St. Louis native and board-certified primary care physician, has me on the shot. Let's talk about cost. Is it cheaper to go to my primary care physician, or is it cheaper to go to you?
The pricing it's what we consider a conditional threat. All of the particulars have to come together at the right time, timing-wise, as this front moves in later this evening. And I think the primary threat, this is a level 1 out of 5, so it's a low-level threat. It's for the entire listening area. And it's for later this afternoon and this evening in particular. And the primary threat from these storms would be damaging winds, downburst-type winds. But a secondary threat would be locally heavy rain causing some brief flooding, roadside type flooding, that kind of thing, intersections, just from the heavier rain. But the good news on this one is that this hot, humid air mass that we're in right now is going to be replaced by lower humidity. So you're talking highs tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday in the upper 80s to near 90, maybe the lower 90s in some spots, but lower humidity. And that's going to make for a pretty nice pattern that's going to carry us right up to 4th of July when the humidity returns, wouldn't you know it?
Awesome. As always, love hearing from you. Thanks so much for taking the time on a busy day with your eye on the skies to give us that very wonderful update with little storms this afternoon, but maybe good weather around the pike. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, Kent Earhart.
Okay, anytime.
That was fun conversation. Hey, quick reminder for you guys, Salvation Army teaming up with KTRS and our friends here at Westport, Christmas in July. And we've got these really great big white cardboard boxes out at the KTRS studios. Swing by, come see us at Westport, bring some new unwrapped toys, and make a child's Christmas in the St. Louis area a good one this year. We know 6,500 area children are served by the Salvation Army every single holiday season thanks to their Angel Tree Toy Project. Same thing in July. We know because of all of the tornadoes that we've had, it's not too early to start collecting for this very important program every single year. Also, join us for the movie night that is being sponsored by Westport and KTRS, where you can bring a new unwrapped toy, watch 2 great movies here at Westport Plaza, the big screen out in our courtyard area. That's going to include The Sandlot on one week, Finding Nemo on the other. You can bring the toys then or bring them to the studio here any old time. We're very proud to be part of this project every single year. It's been a great show. We got a great show for you tomorrow. John Carney and Max are up next. We'll see you next time on The Frank and Jill Show. Make it a good one, everybody.
I love a day on the water with friends, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis sometimes holds me back. Now I'm all in with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi. Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy.
Teaching music is my passion.